we're live.
Good morning, everybody.
Cheers.
Are we in frame properly here?
Not on yours.
Ish.
Not on mine either.
Ish. I gotta move this because I'm still getting sick. One of these days we'll have a studio where everything is pre-set up and we know exactly where to go every time, and the camera doesn't move. It's not our phones, all that stuff. But actually, that looks pretty good. Actually, right
It's
there.
not bad.
Okay.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. It's February already. That was a fast January.
It is indeed.
It's the middle of February.
Almost.
Wow. Okay, so today we didn't really have anything
Burning.
Burning.
A brain topic.
in our brains to talk about, so we figured we'd do a Q&A. I wish we had decided to do this a few days ago to give people time
To ask
to
questions.
ask questions.
You have an eyelash again. You always
I have an
have
eyelash. Why is my thing saying unable to connect at this moment?
I don't know.
That's weird.
Internet is tripping.
Somebody's talking about bandwagons. Hold on. People are saying, where are you at, B? But I'm on.
Maybe they came on at our regular time because we're a little.
No, that just happened. That was just posted at 11:11.
Huh. Because something happened with your internet on
Yeah, but it
the
says
YouTubes.
that I'm on, and it says I'm live.
Well, there's usually a delay, so
Okay.
they.
Well, if you guys
y'all-
if you're on Instagram and you're on YouTube, let me know if you're
If you're
seeing
on YouTube,
things.
let us know if you're seeing us on YouTube.
Yeah. Somebody said something about bandwagons. Let's see.
Something about fire.
I'm sure they will have the gooder words. Do you know that I'm in a long, large carb increase? What is going on?
Studies. They're talking about studies of something.
Something that we weren't sold on. Was there a study or something that was asked?
Mom and Dad weren't sold on it. We're Mom and Dad. I don't know.
I feel like you asked me a question.
Go back and see if there's a reference there.
Okay, let's see. Thanks. Good
So
morning.
to finish
I will
our
not eat fiber either. Keep going.
To finish our first thought, y'all, open Q&A today. We're just gonna ramble about whatever comes into our minds, and anything you all want to ask us. So, drop your questions in the chat on Instagram. Something is happening on YouTube. Juliana said we can't see you on YouTube. So yeah, something weird is going on with YouTube for some reason. She says it still says waiting on YouTube. Maybe you need to end it and start over. So Juliana, drop your original question because we don't know what y'all were talking about. He kept trying to scroll all the way back, but he kept getting error messages on YouTube. So drop it in Instagram, what y'all were talking about, what study, what topic that was or question that was on Instagram, and we will address it.
Just Bronson is live. No, that is not it. It is not Bronson is live. I got to rebuild this whole thing. Hold on.
Oh no.
So if you can, Julianne, do it there. Deb was asking about adding allulose and it activating GLP-1.
Oh, allulose. Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, sorry. It's
Don't look at me.
Very distracting. What are my thoughts on allulose? Let's see. She said, and it activating GLP-1. I have not done any research into that, so I don't have an opinion. But I have mentioned before that some folks in our space, some reputable people in our space, have talked about the promise. The promise, is that the promising? Oh no, what's
Promising?
the words I want to use there?
The possible.
Yeah, it's a word like that. Menopause brain. Yay. The potentially positive. This sucks. I hate menopause brain. There's a word I want to use that's the perfect word, and I can't find it. Anyway, we'll just say the promising, potentially beneficial effects of allulose. And
now it wants to go this way. No.
The things I've seen have been more about, I want to say more about the blood sugar benefits.
Wow.
I believe. And there probably is something related to GLP-1. There's a lot. There's a lot coming out now. There's so much out there now.
Well, here's the thing that people need to understand when it comes to GLP-1. GLP-1 is a naturally produced substance in your body that is a response to food. If you're not eating the wrong types of food,
and other lifestyle factors. There's a lot coming. What I was about to say is there's a lot coming out these days because of these GLP-1 agonist drugs that is now coming out on both sides saying, the benefits of GLP-1 agonists and the benefits of the things you can do to naturally utilize, or once again, I don't have the words today. The things you can do to naturally boost GLP-1 and utilize that mechanism to get the same type of benefits that you might get from those drugs, but naturally, from food, from lifestyle interventions.
Right.
And the conversation is ultimately no different than the conversation around everything else. When we talk about blood sugar, for example, there are supplements and drugs you can take that can impact positively your blood sugar response. There are also dietary interventions and lifestyle interventions you can use to have a better blood sugar response. So it's the same conversation that just always gets, when there's a new when there's a new drug on the market, or there's a new protocol, or there's a new medical intervention, there's always going to be this conversation on both sides.
Right. You're not unhealthy. Now it's doing it again.
I don't know what's happening on YouTube. I think we should just say goodbye to YouTube and just do this on Instagram at this point.
That is kind of annoying.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Is your internet on your phone?
Yeah, I mean,
check the Wi-Fi on
everything. Yeah, there's no reason why I should be doing this. Okay. All right. What was I going to say? I was going to say, you're not in a poor metabolic condition. You're not unhealthy right now because of a lack of a supplement, right? You're not unhealthy because your body is allulose deficient, right? There are things that need to be done to maintain metabolic function, which should always be the priority first. Instead of looking at things, this is where we get into...
Well, it's the magic pill phenomenon, right?
This is where we get into the trap of this process, in that, if we're looking at what are some things that I can do to enhance my satiety to help me lose weight so I don't eat as much. Well, there's a lot of things you can do with normal, regular food that you get the same thing, right? Are you eating enough? Are you eating enough protein? Are you getting enough fat? You can do the same stimulation that you get with GLP-1 that you get with some other injection or drug. You can get some of that from food too. So if you're not getting enough of that from the food, don't jump straight to the shot. That's all I'm saying.
And you're including supplements.
The shot of something in your arm, or the shot of something in your mouth. Same thing.
Well, what it comes down to, this is what you're talking about. What it comes down to is this. The question is more, why am I interested in this potential, this particular intervention that I've heard about, right? It's the same, I get a lot of this in my my weekly check-ins, right? When I ask, what do you need for support? And I get questions like, what are your thoughts on XYZ?
Right. Why?
This, I just got this one, shout out to, who you are. my UK girlfriend. What do you think about P-Volve was one of the new ones.
P-Volve? I don't know.
Yeah, it's apparently this new fitness revolution that's taking over the UK. And you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is.
What is it?
You don't have to look it up. It's basically, think Peloton.
Okay.
But classes, fitness classes. It's fitness classes. It's
Okay.
videos.
Okay, so
Fitness
it's
videos,
like
classes with weights, with different.
So it's
different
less.
things.
So it's less body, P90. Like it's all the same stuff.
Less
Okay.
meals, right? It's group fitness classes online.
Group fitness classes
essentially.
online. Okay.
Right, but that's the idea. Is this is what I get all the time? Is what are your thoughts on this?
Beachbody, that's
What are
what
your
I'm
thoughts
saying.
on that? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this phenomenon, this supplement, this thing, this drug? The same process is underlying all of those questions. Will this thing get me results that I'm not getting now?
That aren't happening fast enough.
Or will this thing, what do you think about these magical benefits, the magical beans, right? It's like, what do you think about this thing? And ultimately is there a way that I can get results without doing the basics? That's usually
Or
wow.
I just spilled coffee all over you. That was hotter than I expected.
That was
it to
very
be.
hot because I haven't felt it on my leg.
Or because I now have a big coffee stain.
Coffee stains. Take it off. Take it off. I think they'd appreciate it.
Is the question you're asking a search for justification for doing something you know you shouldn't do? Right? In the allulose question, allulose is going. I don't know. It's a sweetener, right? I want to make keto treats, and I want to use allulose because I like the sweetness. I'm looking for the sweet. I'm not addressing any of the issues about why I want these things. But if there's a good health benefit to why I could use allulose, that will help me justify keep making these treats. Does that make sense?
Point.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not that I have a need for allulose metabolically, but I have a need for allulose emotionally. So I'm going to try and justify it metabolically.
Now, in this case,
It's the scientific loop-de-loo of trying to find a way to justify something.
That's the thought process, right? The thought process go back to, okay, why am I looking into this thing, right? In this particular case, I happen to know that Deb was trying it. I think she was trying like a teaspoon in her coffee or something. Right. So I know that was not the case in this situation, right?
Sure.
And it might be similar to somebody asking a question I get every so often, which is about berberine. Should I be taking berberine? Should I be, right? It's kind of like...
That's a good one, yeah.
It's when you're not using it, trying to justify something, you're just thinking, well, if I add this supplement, here's the question. What are you trying to get from it? What are you hoping it will do for you?
Finish the sentence.
Yes.
If I add this...
Then what? Then what?
Right.
Right? What are you seeking? Are you like... I've heard that this will act like a GLP-1 agonist and make me less hungry, so I stop eating so much because I'm overeating. Then let's get into why am I overeating? What is the issue, the problem that I'm trying to solve? If I'm overeating, why? Why am I overeating? I'm just incessantly hungry. Okay, let's delve into that. Is it physiological hunger? Is my stomach growling? Is it stomach hunger or is it head hunger? And am I actually physically hungry all day long? Well, let's ask ourselves then, am I eating enough? Do I actually need to eat more? If I'm really hungry all day long, maybe I need to actually eat more. Or maybe I'm not actually physiologically hungry. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. And I think I'm hungry, but really, I'm thirsty. I'm not well hydrated. Maybe I think I'm hungry, but I'm bored. Maybe I think I'm hungry, but I'm stressed. And I'm finding finding myself eating when I don't need to be eating, when I'm not actually physiologically hungry. So let's get into the deeper questions there. And then maybe that supplement you're hoping will magically make this thing change for you. Because that's what I see it as, is this, if I could just not be hungry anymore, then I could lose this weight.
Well, yeah, I just said, go ahead, finish your.
But is that the question we need to be asking? Should we be striving or looking for a thing that will take the difficulty and the challenge away? Or is there a challenge we need to overcome? Right. We need to work on actually overcoming.
And this goes back to another aspect of the basics. If you are not consistently executing the fundamental things that you need to make yourself healthy, no amount of supplementation is going to work for you long term. Because the minute you stop, you're going to go right back to the things you were doing before that made you unhealthy. Okay? So I'm thinking about this, I don't know a single person. So just a quick recap. GLP-1 agonists, guys, and this is just one example. It could be berberine. There's so many different things that we could talk about in this context. Simulates something that happens in your body if you're eating the right amounts and the right foods to begin with, right? I don't know anyone who is eating a good amount of protein, not high fat. Let me rephrase this. Everybody I know that has started a GLP-1 protocol is either standard American diet or super high fat, low protein keto carnivore. I don't know anybody in the keto carnivore space who has started using a GLP-1 who is high protein. Okay? And you've heard me talk about it before. This is completely just my perception of the things that I'm seeing out there, people that I talk to, and what I'm being exposed to. But you guys have heard me talk about it's the combination of fat and protein in a meal. If you are eating a ton of fat by itself and you are having problems or struggles getting to where you want to be body composition wise, maybe the GLP-1 drug isn't what you need right now. Maybe you just need to eat more protein and start lifting some weights, which is what we say all the time. Those things have just as much of an impact on your satiety as the GLP-1s do, right? Eat more protein, lift weights. Satiety issues go out the window, okay? And even if you do feel like you need to eat more, if you're eating more protein, it's not going to body fat. So there's a lot of other things in the basics area that I would say the second question to ask yourself after, what is this going to do if I do this? What is my motivation for doing this? The second question is, am I doing what I need to be doing in the basics first?
Right.
Right. I could add this. That's great. But if I'm not doing the basics, what is this really going to do?
Yeah.
Because there isn't a single supplement in the world that's going to replace the basics. Ever.
That's it. The supplements are supplemental.
They're on top of. If you're not doing the basics, what are you adding on top?
Well, and I think that's exactly it. Is there's this, I like to talk about empowerment and liberation and power, personal power. And I don't like anything that makes us shop that out to something else or someone else.
Ooh, yes.
And so
don't give your power away.
I think a lot of the time, whatever quick fix you're seeking, it's not necessarily that you think, some people do think that these quick fixes are actually just going to magically make them lose weight. But I think a lot of the desire for it is actually this feeling that you can't do it on your own. You are a failure, or you cannot stick to this diet. You need this other thing to make you be able to do it.
Yep.
And I understand that. I totally get that, because when you are in this cycle of trying and failing, quote unquote, trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. That is very defeating. And I see that all the time from my ladies. I feel defeated. I feel like a failure. And this thing is promising you this potential for no longer feeling that way and feeling like you can actually do this because it's going to make it easier for you to do it.
Yeah.
And
it's a rescue.
So
you feel like you're being rescued.
I totally get that. And I'm not totally anti GLP-1 drugs. We've talked about this inside my community.
As with everything, it's a tool.
We are never like totally. I just talked about this in my feedback this week to my academy. Never say never about anything. I'm not XYZ is always bad or never good or you should never do this or you should always do that. And I'm sympathetic and I'm empathetic to people who feel the need for the help because you're struggling so deeply, right? And I do think that in very careful dosages with a good practitioner, where you're also coupling these things with the basics.
And a long-term view. It's not a quick...
A plan to eventually get off of it and all of that, right? I think that these things can be done safely
you know what I would like
and
to
effectively.
See? I would like to see, and I don't know if anybody's doing this, but I'm curious, if you guys know of any practitioners that are doing GLP-1 protocols and pairing it with some kind of therapy, counseling, behavioral change process as well.
Ooh.
That could be really powerful because I think there has to be something layered on top of that in order to, because it's the coming off of it that's the hard part.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's I've been reliant on this and I don't want to be reliant on this, but I also feel like it's going to help X, Y, or Z specifically. That's the goal. But then now it's, it could easily become a crutch.
Absolutely.
And I think,
Well, and there is this, you're right. There's such a mental component to that because when I'm doing something that I believe is going to get me somewhere I haven't been able to get myself, then yes, I am literally saying that I need this thing to be able to do this thing. And that is now something that is going to be very difficult to overcome. To be able to say that I will be able to do this on my own when I'm believing so deeply that I can't. Right? And now I'm reinforcing that by taking this thing and then being able to do something I haven't been able to do without it. And now it's just reinforcing that belief that I am never going to be able to do this without it. Right? So I think you need the mental and psychological supports and emotional supports along the way from day one on those things. And it's very much
I would say
weight loss surgeries. It's very similar to that,
similar. Yeah.
Right?
Because if you're thinking about doing it, I would say, and I don't know if I've ever heard anybody talk about this, find a coach or a therapist or a counselor that you can get with before you start the protocol. Get a baseline, get an understanding, work with someone to build that self-awareness as you start the process and understand what the expectations. Ask your doctor, what happens when I start to titrate down? What happens when my dosages get smaller? What happens 6 months, a year from now when I'm trying to get off of this? How does my body react? What's going on? What are the things I got to deal with? Talk to, get a coach, something so that you have an outlet to kind of help support the mental side of the process, because there's going to be a lot of mental stuff that you deal with.
Yeah.
We had a good question. We're going to segue into another one now. This is a very good question. Thank you, Holly, for asking this question. Not sure on correct verbiage, but do you have a recommended amount of muscle one should carry?
And she said, I feel like I heard you mentioned that Bronson had a ratio or something.
I do. Well, it's not a ratio.
You have
it's
an
percentage.
article that you've written about.
It's in my book.
This.
So if you guys get my book, The Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness Book, I actually have a specific section called How Much Muscle Do You Need? And it goes over sarcopenia, what is sarcopenia, how much muscle do we need, all that kind of stuff.
And yes, I've shared this many times inside my community.
Yes, there is. So we often talk about, and I go into this in the book as well, we often talk about body fat percentage. Women should be at this body fat percentage, men should be at this. This is what average is. This is what athletes are at. This is what all of those types of things. And nobody ever talks about how much muscle we need to have.
Yep.
And we talk about, Gabrielle Lyon talks about the muscle, muscle-centric medicine. And I've never heard her talk about how much muscle you should have. It's something I don't understand why nobody's like, here's a recommendation of how to determine if you have enough muscle.
Well, I think I know why, and Gabrielle Lyon talks about this a lot, that there is no standard for measuring your muscle mass.
Correct, which I make a standard in my book.
And that's no, not that. What I'm talking about is an actual measurement, right? So she talks about the difficulty for the average person. Yeah. You're not going to be able to measure that the same way you would do for body fat, because the mechanisms, the scales, the things that you can get access to as a regular
See, I don't
person.
agree with that. Because if we're using calculations and equations to guesstimate a body fat percentage, we can do the same thing for lean mass.
Yeah.
And we do that. I mean,
well,
there
we do
are plenty
for lean mass. She's talking about muscle.
I understand where she's coming from, but again, I don't agree with it because you know how I am. It's less about the accuracy and it's more about the trend. So,
and I would agree.
Whatever you come up with, if it's a close enough estimation and you can track its improvement or reduction, then
I agree with your thinking in that the things we have to track body fat percentage are also not accurate.
Right.
So why the hell are we not doing it for muscle, because we're not going to be able to get this perfect accuracy?
Right.
Yes.
That's exactly it.
Yep.
So,
and I'm curious because I do have her book somewhere.
Okay.
I'm curious if she does talk about that somewhere in the book.
I've never heard her talk about it. So, where was I going with it? Oh, so here's how I look at it. So there's a trick here that we got to talk about, the gotcha on the back end of this, but. Do I remember the numbers off my head? I want to say that for
what you said, you gave a
women, it's 40 to 45% skeletal muscle mass.
I remember
percentage.
Something like that. Yep.
And it's probably the same for men. I think there was a slight difference, but it was
I think there was a slight difference.
It was basically, we'll just say around 40%. I can go get the book, or you can go buy the book on Amazon. Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness Book. Let's just say, for the sake of this conversation,
I want to grab the book.
You
keep talking.
All right. It's around 40% skeletal muscle mass. And it's calculated. I use an InBody composition scanner. Any DEXA or bioelectric impedance scale that has skeletal muscle mass as something that it looks at, right? Which is different than lean body mass. Lean body mass is anything that's not fat. Skeletal muscle mass theoretically is just the muscle mass that's attached to bone, the muscle that makes our bodies move, okay? So the gotcha is, right? And it is that when we're talking about skeletal muscle mass, we have to consider body fat percentage as well. Because what will happen is, if you're a lean person and you say, hey, I've got 50% skeletal muscle mass, but you're running at 8% body fat, that's not any healthier. Okay, so there's a balance. What I like to see in general from a health perspective, around 40% skeletal muscle mass is a good target. Okay, or more, that's great, more is fantastic. And around, we'll just round it between men and women, around 20 to 22% body fat is a healthy number. Okay, so if you are 8% body fat and 45% skeletal muscle mass, or higher, right? You can't find it? There's some in my bookcase. There should be some in my bookcase. Yeah, there's some in my bookcase. And obviously, guys, if you're a super low body fat percentage, you're probably going to be higher than 45% lean mass. You could be at the 50 level, right? 50%, 60%, whatever. And remember, we're talking skeletal muscle mass, not lean mass. So there's the variance in between the two is all the stuff that's not skeletal muscle mass. That's kind of going to stay the same. So we have to have a balance. And if you're too lean, you're not healthy. If you're too under-muscled, you're not healthy. We got to find that balance there. That's pretty much what that is. You don't see one in there?
I found the journal.
Wow, I don't know what to say. Yes, Holly. Skeletal muscle mass divided by total weight, just like it would be for body fat. Body fat mass divided by total weight.
Found it.
Hey, there we go. Okay.
You have too many keto books.
All right, so let's see. I gotta find. Look at that. Turn right to it.
Skeletal muscle mass divided by total weight.
Yeah.
You answered that.
All right, body fat in context. So if you guys haven't gotten this book, honestly, this is an old cover. The cover now, I redid it, is red. So if you're looking for the ultimate ketogenic fitness book, and this book's backwards on there. Is this backwards for you guys?
We're flipped on Instagram.
Okay. Skeletal muscle mass averages. Just to give you an example, the current averages for most people, right? I think that's what this is, right?
You had such a hard time finding that, though.
It took me forever to find this data. The average man is about 35% skeletal muscle mass. The average woman is about 32% skeletal muscle mass. So that's kind of where I took, basically, again, going back to Gabrielle and saying there's no standard. I basically took all the information I could find about what the current population is at. Where is the current population and how much muscle most people have? And then I looked at people that I consider to be in good shape, elite athletes, bodybuilders, people that are, have above average, and then I kind of went somewhere in the middle, right?
Let me see your phone. I want to use your calculator to see what mine is.
Okay. And then, all right, skeletal muscle mass recommendations.
Percentages, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was around 40 for women. Yeah.
Yeah. So skeletal muscle mass for men, all ages, I recommend 45% or more. Skeletal muscle mass for women, all ages, I recommend 40% or more.
I'm 45.
Look at that. Bingo, bango.
Bam. What are you? What's your skeletal muscle?
I don't know what it is right off the top of my head. It's usually around 95 at 185.
51. Yeah. Okay.
So that is...
Go, Holly. Holly's at 41.
Woohoo!
Okay, so Jen Cheney says my DEXA doesn't have a skeletal muscle mass. That's correct.
Yeah.
DEXA is going...
DEXA's had skeletal muscle mass.
No.
They have lean and they have...
Fat-free. They include bone and fat-free.
Right, but then what is lean? Because I thought they had two different...
No, they literally do not have a skeletal muscle mass. Okay. So
I thought DEXA did.
DEXA's going to give you...
lean
and this is why I say Gabrielle says what she says, because InBody gives you an estimate of skeletal muscle mass. Some of those scales, I don't remember if...
Tanita does.
If
there's a couple
Renfo,
of those.
I'm not sure if Renfo does.
I think some
certain ones do, but it's just it's a guess. And DEXA doesn't give you skeletal muscle; it gives you lean mass and fat-free mass. Yeah. Some scales will confound the two and either give you fat-free mass or lean mass, and they're generally giving you the same thing. Yeah. Either way. If you see a difference from one scale to another on that fat-free mass or that lean mass number, it might be because of bone, which DEXA is going to give you your bone mass.
In that because it's all
and they're going to include it
index.
in fat-free, which is anything but fat.
Yeah.
The lean mass, they just take the bone out, but the lean mass still includes your organs, your tissues, your fluid, water, and things of that nature included in it. So this is one of the many reasons why it was so hard for you to find these numbers in the first place, because most measurements are looking at fat and lean, and with lean it includes a lot more than just your skeletal muscle mass.
Yeah, and if you're looking at just lean mass, somewhere on average, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's 60%.
Yeah.
I think on average lean mass is around 60% for most people. Which is everything that's not fat. What did you want to look up?
I wanted to see how much of my skeletal muscle mass makes up my total lean mass.
Oh, do you know your total lean mass?
Yeah. So my total lean mass is like 94, 95.
That's crazy, babe. My skeletal muscle mass is your total lean mass.
Yeah, this is the difference between men and women. And you're a foot taller than me.
Oh, wow. And how much more? It's 50, 60 pounds more than you? 70 pounds?
You're
185, 190?
I'm 115, so 70.
70 pounds.
Yeah. So it looks like if I did the calculation of how much percentage of my total lean mass is skeletal muscle, it would be 55.
Okay.
So if you were to, if you want to take that as just an estimate.
Which is, so around 60% is...
Somewhere between 50 and 60%.
Yeah.
Probably.
So if your body fat percentage, and I haven't done these ratios to figure out what the averages are, so if it equals more than 100, sorry. But if you're at like 35% body fat, you're probably likely in the 40 to 50 lean mass range, because there's that gap in between the 100% is going to be...
What did you say?
If you're at like 35% body fat,
mm-hmm.
and you're probably in the, maybe let's say 50 lean mass, 50% lean mass.
Okay.
So there's 15% that's may not be included. Like it's the water, the organs, whatever, may not have gotten caught in either of those two equations. It's never going to equal 100 exactly.
Well, a lot of these scales, they're just using formulas that do.
That's what I'm saying.
You're going to see that your lean mass
could match exactly
is exactly what's not fat, and that's how they're calculating it. Yeah. So that's interesting because if you look at my lean mass, let's say 94 divided by my total weight, then I'm about 82% lean mass, which makes sense because I'm about 18% body fat right now.
Okay.
It's just the inverse of that. But skeletal muscle mass, I'm at 45%.
Right. So if you're at 82% lean mass and 45 of that is just skeletal, then that means that there's 45 is 40 of it is
35 of it
is organs and
water,
and whatever else.
Contents of my stomach for undigested foods and your intestines and whatnot. Yep. Colon.
What percentage of it is poop?
That would be interesting. Well, like 60% of our body is water.
So, good question.
Yeah, that was a great question.
What else? Got any questions you've gotten this week from anybody?
Oh my gosh, I knew you were going to ask that, and I was like, I should have looked at that to be prepared. Well, I can tell you the topic that we were talking about in the Academy this week, and it's so funny because a lot of the time, one of the hot topics that becomes a large component of what I talked about on the feedback video and then our Zoom calls ends up landing on my algorithm on Instagram or YouTube or somewhere the next day. And sure enough, Mark Carroll and I'm forgetting her name. Anyway, Mark Carroll, really great personal trainer in the bodybuilding space, posted about this morning, and it popped up on my feed, and I was like, oh, look at that. Affirmation and alignment. So we were talking about training,
mm-hmm.
free weights versus machines.
Oh, because you were talking about the Smith machine.
The Smith machine, because, certain schools of thought are you should never use a Smith machine. Smith machines are terrible. If you're a serious lifter, you would never use that machine. And that's a very limited perspective. And sure, if your goal is to get really good skill-wise and strength-wise with the big 5 fundamental lifts, or Olympic lifting or powerlifting, then a Smith machine is not going to be generally in your programming.
Or machines.
Or machines in general. Yeah, you're just going to be doing, all you're going to be doing is basically practicing your big lifts on free weights. And you might do some accessory lifts with free weights.
Yeah.
But you're very unlikely to be doing machines.
I'm running into this in this whole keto athletic thing context, right? And you know what I'm really getting frustrated with?
What?
I'm really getting frustrated with everybody talking in everybody else's lane. Because there's this is the challenge. And we talk about context. It's all context, right? What you're talking about is bodybuilding coaches talking about bodybuilding. If you're just trying to get in shape, why are you listening to bodybuilders?
Or
if I'm just trying to get in shape, why am I listening to an exercise scientist whose focus is on decathletes or some random thing, right?
Yeah.
All of these experts out there across all of these different areas, and people are pulling all of this information that doesn't apply to them.
Well,
or they're talking about things and bashing something
that
has nothing to do with what... I'm a bodybuilding coach. If I'm going to talk about a Smith machine being bad, or I'm an Olympic lifting coach and I'm going to talk about don't use these machines for XYZ, of course not. That's not what I do.
Right. And if you're a bodybuilding coach, you're not going to say not to use a Smith machine. That was
Whatever,
our discussion.
Yeah, like it's just...
The discussion in the group this week was, okay, what is your goal? Because
always comes back to that.
Right. And the people who told you never do this or never do that, this is why we were talking about the never say never, did they explain why? Did they explain who they're talking to and why they're telling you this? Right? Because now she did understand that they were talking about for the compound movements. That this previous place that she was in, group that she was in, you know what group, said you don't want to be using that for compound movements. And I explained why they were saying that. Because yes, if you want to get good at back squats, then you want to be doing back squats primarily with free weights, with a barbell, right? But if your goal is to change your body shape, which is what we do in bodybuilding, that's our specialty, that's our expertise, then you would want specific training mechanisms that bodybuilders use to create the shape that you're trying to create. If you are a woman wanting to create the hourglass figure, which is what most of the ladies come to me for, then you might want to listen to bikini bodybuilding coaches and athletes and the kinds of things that we do in bikini bodybuilding, because we are creating that feminine hourglass shape with the way that we train. That is our goal and our focus. If your focus is to get really good at functional fitness, functional movements, to be better at everyday life skills, then you might want to focus on a functional fitness program. If you want to get really freaking strong and you want to be eventually compete in powerlifting or strongman type of competitions or Olympic lifting, then you want to go look for somebody that is teaching that specific modality that will help you get good at that thing. If you play a particular sport and you want to get better at that sport, then look for advice and recommendations and programs that help you develop the skills in that particular sport.
Yeah. You're not going to go to a basketball coach to get better at pickleball.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people are doing. They're going to whatever and, oh, he's a coach, I'll listen to him. Well, but he's not saying anything that applies to you.
And this goes back to what we always talk about, which is whatever you heard, wherever you heard it, dig deeper, understand the context. Who are you listening to? Who are they talking to? Why?
And does the message apply to you?
Yeah, and Juliana just nailed it. Who's the speaker and are you the intended audience?
Yep.
Yeah, she said, now where have I heard that before?
Bingo.
We're always going to bring you back to that. Why am I, now here's the other question we talked about earlier with supplements, GLPs, whatever it might be. Why am I interested in this intervention or modality or protocol or supplement or insert, whatever newfangled thing you're hearing about wherever? Why am I interested? What do I think this can do for me?
Right. Why am I asking questions about how much zone 2 training should I be doing? Because Peter Attia says it's the key to longevity.
And what will help
Why am I worried about that?
What will help people like us whether you're an actual client or a member inside our apps, inside our programs, or you're in our Facebook groups or his Discord or something like that, and you just want to get our thoughts on something. When you can start by asking yourself those questions and then giving us that context, we can help you more. If you say, what are your thoughts on zone 2 cardio? Well, that's a very general
It's a very
question.
wide open question.
And the way I answer that may not be helpful to you at all. So what I would love to see is, hey, here's what I'm doing. I was thinking about adding in some zone 2 cardio because this is what I've heard about it. This is why I think it would be good for me. What are your thoughts? Now I can give you specific, targeted, helpful advice.
Broad questions get broad answers. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Also, here's another little food for thought. Let's drop a breadcrumb here.
Uh-oh.
Sometimes I think y'all want to be vague because you are looking for validation of something. You're looking for permission to do something that's actually probably not the most beneficial for you.
Justification.
So, hey, I heard this because this, what do you think?
And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? I've got a couple friends that are doing this challenge. I want to do it with them. So I heard this challenge, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's great. They're doing it, and we don't get that part of it, that your friends are doing it, which is why you're interested in doing it.
There's a lot of when there's a lot of justification in the question, we already know.
Right.
This is you trying to justify something that's probably not a good idea for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got 18 million other things that are going on, but my friends are doing this, so I want to do it with them. And it's going to make everything else in my life go completely to crap because it's too much for me to handle. Okay. I had a question. I had a topic in my head that disappeared. It did. No. I did. I lost it. It was the thing I talked about this morning when I woke up and couldn't go back to sleep because my brain was going crazy. Just to reiterate, and it actually goes along with the skeletal muscle mass body fat percentage thing.
Okay.
So there's a trend, I guess. I don't know. There's a concept that I'm seeing as I dig more into this athletic performance aspect of the ketogenic diet, and that is a lot of athletes complaining that when they went ketogenic, they had no energy, they couldn't lift, they lost strength, all these different things. And we can get into all the different topics about length of adaptation and are you doing adaptation properly, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing that I'm seeing that I want to put a disclaimer out there now for anybody that listens to me, as I switch to be more athletic and sports performance focused.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You're going to see my recommendations where normally I talk about how much fat and protein you need, matching it 1 gram to your lean body mass, right? So if I weigh 165, if I have 165 pounds of lean mass, then I'm going to shoot for 165 grams of protein, 165 grams of fuel macros. For the athletic performance side of things, you're probably going to see recommendations along the lines of 1.25 to 1.5 grams per pound of lean mass, because the demands of an athlete are more than the demands of an everyday activity person who's just trying to get healthy.
And we added on top of that a body fat percentage.
Correct. As an athlete who has a low body fat percentage, because a lot of the athletes I'm listening to and hearing from and talking to, body fat isn't a problem. It's performance that they're focused on. I don't have enough body fat. So what occurred to me this morning was, I wonder if, here's the question that I asked. I asked ChatGPT and it came back with some stuff that now I have to go dig into. Is there a natural level of body fat percentage where more exogenous fat sources are required to maintain energy requirements.
Because you now are
Right.
at under a threshold with
Right.
which you can't easily or readily tap into the amount of body fat you have because you don't have a lot more to spare.
Right. So basically, your body, the more body fat you have, the more energy you have available. There has to be some level where your body says, and this is not scientific the way I'm going to phrase this, where your body says, I don't want to use any more of what I have stored because that is my survival mechanism.
Yep.
I have to eat it in order to use it. Right? So what body fat percentage is it where your body's like, hey, I'm really not comfortable using what I have left. You need to give me more.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for. So I'll be digging into that. And basically the idea, guys, is, and we already know this. This shouldn't be something new, but I'm not hearing people talk about it in the sports side of things. We all know if you have a ton of body fat, if I'm 35, 40% body fat, I could fast for 90 days and never have an energy problem. Ever. I've got energy. I get some protein, I get my micronutrients, I'm good. Right? But if I'm running at 10% body fat, I would be bedridden because I have no energy at all. I have to eat fat. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing with athletes is they're following, talk about context, a lot of athletes, because this information isn't out there for athletes, it's out there for people who are trying to heal metabolic issues. So what are the recommendations? 1-to-1, right? X number of percentage of fat, X number of percentage of protein, whatever that may be. No one is accounting for the increased demand that people who are active and athletic competitively and already lean, what they need. So these athletes are using general population recommendations to fuel themselves as they adapt, and it simply is not enough. So that's just something.
You do see it on the other side too, right? Where you're being told you're 50% body fat and you need to be eating 2 or 3 times more fat than protein. You actually don't.
Right, and this goes back into the whole GLP. Like this is like you need more protein, guys. You don't need fat. If you're 35% body fat, why the F are you stuffing fat in your face? It doesn't make any sense.
All of the keto gurus tell you to.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
what was I going to say about that? Oh, if y'all watched last week, I think it was last week, we were talking about macros, right? We were talking about your formula of 1-to-1 to lean body mass. And what caveat did I make for women like me?
Oh, yeah, if you're already small.
You're already lean, you're already small. You're going to calculate those numbers and it's not going to give you enough. It's not going to give you enough protein or fat. It's going to be too low. That 1-to-1 is going to be way too low for you. So this is exactly what you're talking about here. For lean individuals.
You need more.
For all lean individuals, but especially petite female lean individuals.
Petite. You're not petite, you're thick.
Which is another reason why
Can you be petite and thick at the same time?
What do we call that?
Thick teeth. Pathic.
That is not cute. No, we're not creating a new word there. But, I've been talking about the fact that I'm preparing to do a review of Rob Sykes' Keto Savage, Savage System.
I wonder if you're going to sound like mine did when I did my review. We should play them together.
Oh, we should. That would be interesting. Yeah, I've been putting it off because I want to really go through and look at the data and look at my notes from my entire prep on that protocol and pull out, kind of things I might have forgotten along the way and make sure it's really well written and comprehensive. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I keep going back to is the struggle that I had to do the 80% fat, because it was just not enough protein for me and how hungry I was trying to eat that way. And this time at the start of this mini cut, I tried to do it. I couldn't even get to 80%. I was like tapping out at 75%. And then I was still eating too much protein because I couldn't adhere to it. So it's that concept of it was too much. It was not enough of the building blocks, the basic building blocks that I needed. So that will, I'm sure. And I was telling him, I hear from women in the keto space that do wonderfully on 70, 75, 80% fat. They feel better doing that. And I feel worse when I pull back on my protein and I add that much fat. My probably threshold, and Robert talks about it as a protein threshold, I would probably say the threshold of the ratio to fat to protein, but not, I guess in percentages, right? Because I only started looking at percentages when I was trying to chase ketones. And I'm realizing that after multiple times of attempting this, it's not worth it to me to chase ketones. It doesn't make me feel any better.
Well, again, this goes to the difference, and we started talking about this morning. This goes to the difference of where are you in your body composition compared to other people, and because that plays a huge role in it. So it's not just I would say you probably feel better maintaining the lean mass that you have and the metabolic function you have with the protein, and only supplying the fuel that your body needs.
Yes.
You don't need the extra because your body is efficient at burning what you have when you eat it. So someone who is low muscle mass and high body fat, their body is not efficient in a lot of different ways. They have a lot of dysfunction.
Yep.
So there's a different process there.
Yes. And I was thinking about this. This is why I want to go back to the data and see what the data has to say that I tracked all this time, because I don't have issues with blood sugar. I don't have spikes and drops of blood sugar. It stays within a good 10, 15 points up and down no matter what I do with my macros. Mm-hmm. So for a person who's insulin resistant, they might need to do higher fat, lower protein. But I find that anything above 1-to-1 by grams, which is probably about, 65, maybe 70% fat at the most, is unnecessary for me. I feel my best when it's 1-to-1 or less fat.
But you also don't go below a certain amount because you need some.
Yes, exactly that. So.
This question, is that Iva?
Iva World.
Iva World.
Hi coaches, I'm 5'11" and 180 pounds. I'm doing high protein and trying to have 2,000 calories. I can't handle a lot of fat, so some days I go over 200 grams of protein. Is it possible to have too much protein? Oh, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to this question. Thanks for asking the question.
Yeah.
First thing I would recommend is go back to our video from last week.
Yes, because we talked
all about macros, and we talked about all this stuff. And one of the things that you'll hear in that video is stop using calories as your measure. Okay? Figure out how much of protein you need, how much fat you need, and go with that. It's not about the calories. Okay? And then the second thing is, yes, it is possible to overeat protein for your goals. Okay? Biologically, it is very hard to overeat protein. Your body will do whatever it possibly can with the protein that you give it. You would have to eat a crap ton of protein in order for it to mess your body up.
It's something like 4 times your body weight or something.
It's crazy.
It's like in terms, what he's talking about is in terms of this concept of your body can't absorb it or your body can't use it or process it. It will use it all. It just may be, it's going to be very uncomfortable for you to try to get too much protein.
Right.
If you were to try to get too much protein for your body, you would feel
you would know that you're getting too much. You would
not be going to the bathroom. Like there's so many signs and symptoms.
And this is what Rob calls the protein threshold, right? There's when you start, if you're eating so much protein that you're starting to feel sluggish, you're starting to feel bloated. There's a handful of things that go into, I really am probably getting more protein than I need
this much,
right?
Yeah.
So yes. So the answer is effectively yes. It is possible to eat more protein than you need. The question then, back to everything else, is what are you trying to do? and what do you think is going to work best for you?
And where are you starting
trial
from?
and error.
Where are you starting from?
from?
So here's the thing. You shared your height and your weight. That tells us nothing. I don't know what your body fat percentage is. I don't know how much skeletal muscle mass you have. I don't know how lean you are.
Are you trying to grow muscle or are you trying to lose fat?
What is your goal? Right. This goes back to what we were just talking about. Leaner people generally are going to need more fat to be able to function optimally. Higher body fat percentage, if you're 35-40% body fat, you're trying to lose body fat, then you likely can get by with less fat. We also don't know. You shared how much protein you're eating. You didn't share how much fat you're eating.
Right.
You said I can't handle a lot of fat. I don't know what that means in grams. I don't know if you're trying to subsist on 40 grams of fat, which I wouldn't recommend for any human being, or if you're eating 200 grams of fat. I don't know what that looks like. So we would want to look at all of that. Also
understand that high protein doesn't mean anything.
Right. It's all relative.
If you were eating 100 grams of protein before and you're eating 150 now, that's high protein.
Yeah, she's saying she's eating...
Right? I mean, you're eating 200 grams now, but what were you doing before?
Yeah.
If you went from 100 to 200, I would say maybe you should try 125.
Well, this is the other thing.
There's a whole bunch of stuff in between. We see people jump from one to the other.
I just saw this. I just had this conversation with someone in the Carnivore bodybuilding group. She was trying. Her coach had her on she's a very tall individual like yourself. Her coach had her on 260 grams of protein and 170 something fat, and then she felt terrible. She had all these negative symptoms, so they switched. Now she's back to eating 180 grams of protein and 250 grams of fat. I said, well, why didn't you try going 1-to-1? Have you tried going 1-to-1? And she's like, well, I need to get my blood sugar, because for her blood sugar went through the roof. And she's like, I need to get my blood sugar back down. So we went back down on my protein. I was like, well, you probably could have just gone in the middle of both, and you might have still had benefits and got the blood sugar down, but you don't know because you just went from one extreme to the other. And let me tell you, ladies, women, our bodies are incredibly sensitive to changes, more so than men's bodies. This is why you can see men going from standard American diet to fasting and carnivore overnight and get incredible benefits. That's not going to happen for us 9 times out of 10. You do something drastic, you swap your protein and fat, one extreme to the next, 80% fat to 80% protein, your body is going to rebel. Your body is freaking out because it's stressing out. And these cortisol changes that women are so afraid of, the high cortisol, it's because you are causing stress in your body. So going from high fat to low fat and high protein, or the other way around, we need to go slow, small increments here to there. Figure out what you're doing now and then make a small change.
Minimum effective dose. Everybody should be striving and focused on finding the minimum effective dose for everything that they're doing, and that's where you want to be.
And the best way to do that is to take one variable, like how much protein you're eating, do not change it, and just change one other variable, like your fat. If you're wondering, okay, is it okay for me to eat 200 grams of protein? It might be fine for you to eat 200 grams of protein if you're also getting 200 grams of fat. But if you're doing 200 grams of protein and 100 grams of fat, you might feel like garbage, or you might feel a lot better. So it's not necessarily just, is this too much protein? The question is, how much fat are you getting with that? I see this with my community. It may feel like too much protein because you're not eating enough fat to help that protein move through your system. Because guess what fats do? One important function of fats is that they lubricate the intestines, the organs of your body. They help food move through your system. So sometimes women feel constipated when they're eating quote unquote too much protein. But it's not necessarily the protein that's causing the problem, it's that they don't have enough fat with it. This is why we generally recommend against protein-sparing modified fasts, where all you're eating is 200 grams of protein and no fat and no carbs. Now you're having problems simply because of the lack of fat, not because of the too much protein. So there's You've got to look at these variables.
Guys, I was just looking at this today too, metabolic flux or metabolic reversibility, and the idea of maintaining homeostasis, right? Everything is about a balance, okay? So the amount of protein, and this is the thing, right? The amount of protein that your body needs is going to be balanced by the amount of fat that your body needs. So finding those independent variables so that they match each other is the process that we need to go through. Don't artificially match those and then give it to your body and say, here's the ratio I think you should work with. You got to find out what ratio that your body wants, right? So that's where we turn the knob for protein, we turn the knob for fat, we find out what the balance between the two is. The only ratio that works is the one that you find for your body. You have to do the work in adjusting both of them back and forth to find the balance for yourself.
Yep.
All right, yep. We're good. I think we're good.
Julian, guess who didn't have enough fats this week? Ask me how I know.
TMI.
Well, this is also a good way to determine if you're getting too much fat, because if your fats are especially your rendered liquid fats are too high in comparison to your protein, you're going to see things on the other side of
Jennifer just joined. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Jen. You're going to see things on the other end of the equation. Things might move a little too quickly through your body, and you will notice that. So that's a good sign that, maybe it's too much fat.
Too much. Cool.
All right.
Hopefully that was some good information for you guys this
questions.
week. Yeah, and we'll try to come up with an actual topic for next week or next one. Yeah.
And we'll try to give you some advance notice when we're doing Ask Me Anything, so we can.
But if you have any questions, let us know, guys. And I'll try to see what the hell is going on with YouTube. I'm going to have to pull this and then post it as its own video.
If we can.
I should be able to pull this. Fingers crossed. See you next week, guys.
Bye.